There we go. Good afternoon. Starting to see some people join us. Very pleased to have you here. And welcome to another CFO community session. As you do join us, please go ahead in the chat. And those of us who've been here before, you'll be familiar with the drill, but please could you let us know your role and the organization that you're joining us from. So I'll get us started. Go ahead and let us know in the chat, please, your role and where are you joining us from. Starting to see some familiar names in the room as well, which is always nice. Always good to be amongst familiar friends. Excellent. Go ahead and let us know as you join, please. Go ahead and type in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. Thanks, Russ. Thanks for getting started there. I see that Khada from Alteryx is also here with us. Welcome, welcome. All right, lots of people coming in now. Good stuff, good stuff. Ah, lots of nice familiar names in the chat there. Lovely. Good to be back with old friends. There we go. Hey, Bridget, good to have you here. We've got Keshni joining us. Oh, just a quick note. Keshni, the message that you sent has only come through to us, and I suspect others might do the same. So as we're responding in the chat, just make sure if you click on that little drop-down arrow below, make sure that you have everyone selected, not just host and panelists, because of course that way we'll all get an opportunity to see your contributions. Because as you know, this is a collaborative discussion. This is the CFO community, or actually your CFO community after all. So we'll be asking you for your thoughts and your ideas, and most importantly, your questions as well. So please do be generous with those. Okay, lots more people joining us. Good, good, good. So welcome everyone and good afternoon again. We're just kind of getting things kicked off here. So as you do join, you'll notice lots of your friends and colleagues in the room have already got us started by mentioning their company name and their role. So please could you go ahead and do the same? Cool, lots of familiar names there. Excellent. Good, good, good. Really good to be back with some old friends. So welcome once again to another exciting edition, or I guess a webinar and panel discussion collaboration. So this one is brought to you by the CFO South Africa community, and it's in partnership with one of our friends and partners, Alteryx. So this afternoon, I think it's a really important one, because today we're going to be discussing the concept and idea of resilience reimagined. We'll be focusing on redefining the role of finance within a changing world. And every single finance person who I've ever come into contact with or spoken to tells me, we're expected to do more with less or fewer resources in a faster or shorter space of time. And the demands are just increasingly more complicated and complex. So the idea here is let's collaboratively join forces, put our heads together and come up with some solutions and strategies that we can kind of implement immediately to help us become chief value officers and better versions of ourselves, really. So let's take things to the next level here. So during our time here today, to give you an idea of what to kind of expect, we'll have an initial sort of overview and presentation, and then we'll jump into a panel discussion. So please, at any moment, put your thoughts, put your comments in the chat. If you see a familiar name, someone whom you know, go ahead and say hello to them as well. This is your CFO community, and we want to make sure that you are involved in the conversation, because this is our conversation between all of us. So in today's session today, we're going to be wow, that would be right about now, I would imagine. So we're going to be focusing on things like how do we position ourselves as CVOs or chief value officers. We'll be looking at the possibilities between analytics and automation within finance. We'll be looking at how analytics and automation can be the catalyst for sustained finance transformation. And then most importantly, what can we learn from others that are advancing on this journey and in this particular area as well? So let me just go ahead and stop sharing my screen for a second. So we have some amazing panelists who are joining us here today. So I'd like to go ahead and introduce them. So as I do introduce you, please come on audio and video. Let us know that that's working okay. So Estelle, if we could start with you, please. We have Estelle Rudman who's joining us, and Estelle is the Finance Operations Manager over at Momentum Metropolitan. Did I get that right?
Hi, John. Yes,
Okay,
perfect.
good stuff. And your audio is coming through nice and clearly. We see it as well, so that's great. We then also have Russ Mills. So we're all going to have to say a very good morning to Russ, because Russ is joining us over from the States. And Russ is the VP and Field CFO at Alteryx. So welcome, Russ. Good morning.
Good afternoon, everyone. Happy to be here.
Hey, good afternoon. There we go. Awesome. Good to have you with us, Russ. And then lastly, we have a long-standing friend of the CFO community who was a former CFO Awards nominee, as well as a Psycha Top 35 Under 35, and is the CFO of the Federated Employers Mutual Assurance Company, otherwise known as FEM. Yusuf Bodiat. Welcome, Yusuf. Good to be with an old friend.
Thanks, John. Nice to see you.
Yeah, likewise. All right, perfect. So, Russ, I think I've probably already taken too much of your time and spoken too much. So what do you say we go ahead and hand over to you? I know you've got some slides that you'd like to share with us, and then we'll come on and just check in for a couple of questions. So please, everyone, as Russ goes through the presentation, if you have a specific comment or question, go ahead and put them in the chat. We'll be constantly looking at that and make sure that we do answer any of your questions as well. So over to you, Russ.
Okay, well, thank you, John, and everyone. And I'm looking forward to this discussion today. I think we're going to have a great one. And we'll talk about, let me just get this working. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. Okay, so I'm going to start here. It's no surprise to anyone that there is a lot going on in the world, and this volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, I think, is something that is here to stay. It may change shape, it may change name of event, but the things you see on the screen here are all the things that we deal with in business on a constant basis, whether it be weather or economic indicators, rising interest rates, wars. It makes a great case for the need for us to be more prepared, be more resilient, have better insights in order to make faster decisions. And when we talk about this concept of being resilient and being able to have the capacity to withstand and recover quickly from difficulties or external shocks, to spring back into shape, to protect performance, there's a couple of things that I want everyone to keep in mind. The first is a little formula that I came up with about top quartile performance. And I really believe that top quartile performance is a function of people, process, and certainly technology. As data become higher in higher volume and there's more for us to deal with, more information for us to process, we absolutely need technology to help us with that. We need to equip our teams with advanced tools to be able to do this in a very easy way. We certainly want to automate. John made an earlier point about freeing up capacity and being able to position us to do more with less resources, right? To absorb more work, to do deeper analyses and make deeper insights so that we can get to the point where we have more prescriptive actions for the business as a guide to our business partners. We certainly want to upskill people and build this maturity, and there are great ways to do that. You're going to hear a lot about that today. And bringing people together is really important. One of the most difficult challenges in any change or any transformation is to truly establish the culture. And it's really important to build out what I call the 3 C's, the culture, collaboration, in making people feel like they're part of a community, so that we do establish this this culture of data-driven innovation that is all aimed to help us combat these exogenous risks that are constantly coming at us in the world. And it's no surprise that when we hear about CFO surveys and leaders in finance and what they're saying and what they're focused on, that the top number 1 and 2 focuses for finance and priorities have to do with transformation and data and analytics strategy. And to the right of this slide, we see the power as we move from where most of us in finance spend a lot of time, which is understanding what happened and why it happened. And we start getting into the more predictive, what do we think is going to happen based on fact and some data and insights, and then what should happen. How do we understand getting to the point where we can prescribe actions to the business? And that's where value starts to grow exponentially as these insights begin to predict our outcomes, and we are then positioned to prescribe action. And this AI is on the horizon. Everybody is talking about artificial intelligence and the power that it's going to bring responsibly to teams like finance, and be able to take us even further. When we talk about automation, this is some Gartner research that was done recently over this past summer, and the prediction is that only 3 years away, by 2027, 90% of the what happened and the why it happened is going to be automated, fully automated, using the power of AI. And our FP&A, financial planning and analysis functions, are going to rely on AI to help with better scenario planning. There are many teams that I get to speak with while I'm out with our customers that struggle to reach the what if scenario analyses and to have those models in place. And part of the reason is because we as finance people are spending most of our time in the gathering of data, figuring out how to bring it together, a lot of times in very manual ways. And that's occupying a large amount of our time just manipulating the data to get it into a format where we can talk about it and present it, as opposed to flipping that script a bit and allowing us to spend more time on the deeper analytics. So it's no surprise that as companies, most companies, continue to invest very heavily in AI and analytics, that only a fifth of those companies, or 20%, really feel like they've established a data-driven culture. And you might ask why. Why is that only a fifth of companies feel that way? And it really gets down to people and process, the most important ingredients to a change or a transformation. And it follows, it's no surprise here from the International Institute of Analytics, that when they looked at stages 1 through 5 of data maturity, and they have spoken to hundreds of companies, that most companies are stuck in stage 2. And it gets back to the challenging piece of people and process, and how do you really influence transformation and creating sustainable resilience in your business. And there are really 3 pillars that you can focus on, that are the 3 pillars for maximizing not only the power of data and analytics, but maximizing your success in terms of transformation. And it is about people, process, and technology, and getting technology that is useful into the hands of the many as opposed to the few. When we talk about future-built, sustainable transformation underpinned by data and analytics, there are really 6, you can boil this down into 6 attributes. And if you look in the upper left-hand corner of this slide, you'll see that most companies, 75%, if you add up the stagnated and the emerging, 75% of companies are really just either stuck or just about to break out. But they're not quite at the point yet where they're scaling in their future, what we would call future built. And if you look at the 5 things along this slide that start with leadership alignment, these are the 5 future built attributes that have been proven to to help companies ensure that how they're building their transformations and their resiliency have staying power and have sustainability. So underpinned again, as you see horizontally, by a flexible and scalable technology to support our business needs with ease, and easy for our people in our organizations and teams to learn. So what are best-in-class companies doing? They're scaling out self-service capabilities. They're not reserving these advanced tools to just a few people in the organization. They're getting this in the hands of many. They're seeking out value. They're continuing to think big, but they're acting fast. They're working in a very agile way to innovate quickly, to involve everyone, and to really activate on point number 3 here, this data-driven community, right? We know that analytics transformation, or any transformation for that matter, is truly led by people and enabled by technology. So how do we do actions to get these tools in place to nurture learning, to create community, and to make this a nonstop cycle in our business? So we automate, we free up capacity in our teams, and then we use that capacity to do even more valuable work. And I should mention, enrich the careers of the folks that are involved in this and participating in this resiliency and data analytics strategic work. So with that, I will share the Alteryx mission is to make this make these analytics available to all, make it easy for everyone to use, and put some really powerful tools in their hands within the Alteryx platform. So with that, I will turn it over. I think we're going to Estelle, but I'll turn it back over to John.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks so much, Russ. Thank you for sharing. I like what you said about putting tech into the hands of many and not the few. And I think that is just so vitally important, because we need to bring everyone along on the journey, and we all need to form part of it. You know, people support the world that they help to create. So yeah, I really like that idea. You spoke a little bit about the upskilling, modernizing, and then democratizing. And I know we're going to ask you for some additional tips towards the end, but as you kind of think about those sort of 3 components of upskilling, modernizing, and then democratizing, what would you say would be a really good starting point for us?
I think a good starting point for any company is to start to play around with the data you have at your fingertips already. It doesn't need to be perfect. Use what you have, and use the analytical tools in order to start creating some insights, but also as a way to improve your data, because that is using it is a way that we can start to realize maybe some shortcomings, some areas where you might want to go more deeply. So I encourage people, just start to use what you have and make some innovations, and it'll start building momentum and getting attention in your organization.
Yeah, thanks, Russ. And I think Estelle will speak to that a bit in just a moment, because I think there's often a bit of maybe fear or hesitancy around these complex systems, but really starting out small and just building on that competence and awareness goes a long way. So yeah, thanks so much for sharing, Russ. So Estelle and Yusuf, could we invite you back on camera, please? And then Estelle, we're going to come to you first. So for those of us who've just joined, welcome to our session here. We just about to enter into a panel discussion with our esteemed panelists. And we'll be going to Estelle first, because during our prep call, you had some really interesting examples and stories to share, Estelle. So maybe you could start with just letting us know, perhaps in your view or from the Momentum Metropolitan view, how have you seen finance redefined? What are some of the changes that you've experienced? And then tell us about some of the highs and lows.
Thank you so much, John. Yes, I think I need to begin to say that the journey is definitely not a sprint; it's a marathon. But what it excites me so much is that it's a beautiful journey to start with in the beginning and see the results at the end. And the reality is, the journey will never end. Once you started it, it really just gets better. So how we've seen finance redefined is finance is, of course, affected by multiple trends, and all of which are accelerated by technology. So we need to seek technological solutions to survive this disruption, basically, as well as then consider the skills the employees need to scale your business. And as new finance roles emerge, CFOs must re-evaluate how they upskilled existing talent and recruit new employees. So what I've seen is winning finance teams embody competencies related to technology, business acumen, data, and strategy. What was quite exciting for me within Russ's presentation is the golden thread that I could see, around our thinking and this redefined finance.
Yeah, thanks. I think that's exactly it. It's not a question of if, but a question of what we should be embracing. Because if we're not, we're just going to be left behind. And the acceleration and the pace at which we're just evolving is just absolutely insane at the moment. So, yeah, thank you very much for getting us started there, Estelle. So, Yusuf, I'm going to come to you next. And it's interesting that Estelle touched on sort of the recruitment side of things, and I know you've got some interesting views there, but maybe we can start off with a bit more broadly. So when you and I had a conversation about CVOs or Chief Value Officers of the future, I really liked your stance and approach, talking about it more holistically. So tell us more about what that kind of encompasses or involves in your view, Yusuf.
Yeah, thank you. So Russ mentioned it earlier, but I think I'll just say it again. The CFOs of the past were more, let's say, transactional CFOs, where you telling the story of what had happened. You're looking at the accounts and telling everybody what they already know to an extent. Whereas the CFOs of now and the future are more, let's say, strategic CFOs. So you're planning for the future. And I'm not just saying putting the budget together for next year, but planning for what you think may happen, but also what you hope may not happen. So that's just the space we're in at the moment. And I think what's interesting about that is when you're planning for the future, you're not just looking at finance in isolation, but telling the story from a finance perspective. You need to know how your decisions impact every other part of the business. So if you were to make a decision, how would it impact your CIO from an IT perspective? How would it impact the HR team from a people perspective? Do you need more resources? Do you need to get additional skills in-house? How does it affect your risk team? Do they perceive it as risky or non-risky business that you're looking at? So I think as you think about the future, there's so many different opportunities and risks that can impact not just you, but your business, that the chief value officer is actually adding value to the business and not just sitting, looking at the accounts and looking and whether you made profit or not for the year. Because I think it's quite important to remember that the CFO, to a large extent, is supposed to be the business partner for the CEO. And the CEO's job is to deliver on the strategy. So it's how do your actions and your plans and your predictions of the future impact the entire organization and everyone working within it.
That's really well said, Yusuf. Thanks a lot. And what I liked about, again, your view around the chief value officer and the finance function of the future is that it touches so many different points. In our conversation, we spoke about, the challenges that we had all encountered and anticipated during COVID, and some of the challenges that we still continue to focus on, like, working with hybrid teams and how that can affect the resilience and the sort of culture and challenges that we have there. And you had some really, really interesting views about, breaking down some of those geographical borders and some strategies that you had to kind of build a more agile and dynamic finance team. I think you mentioned even you had a consultant working with you.
Yeah, so I think the benefit of lockdown, one of the few benefits, is that we were taught to work differently. So we're sitting at home and working quite effectively currently. I mean, Russ is on the other side of the world right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And the challenge that we had is we always wondered, what are people doing at home? Are they getting the work done? And are they actually knowing and understanding what they're doing? And I think many of us have proved that we actually, as finance professionals at least, get more work done when we isolated, as sad as it may sound, compared to sometimes working at the office when you actually just need to crunch the numbers and get through something.
Sure.
But I think what COVID has taught us, and not us as finance professionals, but just everybody, is that you don't need to be sitting at a desk working for a company for a specific set of hours in the day to get the work done. I mean, when we were chatting yesterday, we spoke about the fact that your pool of resources is so broad, you can literally hire anybody from anywhere across the world, whereas 5 years ago, I'd be restricted to hiring people from the city our office is within.
Yes.
And why that's quite an opportunity is because firstly, your talent pool is so much bigger and broader. You can literally hire someone from the other side of the world and get the work done much more effectively if you find the right resource. The other is because you're working in different time zones, everyone hypothetically may be working from 8 to 5 in their time zone, but your business is running around the clock because you have different people in different time zones working at their pace. I think what's also quite fascinating about the way it's changed for us, at least, is that you don't need salaried employees in the traditional sense. So in the past, if you needed a piece of work done, you either hired a consultant or you hired an employee. Whereas now with this whole, I think the word is gig economy or gig industry that we're working in, you're not getting a traditional consultant from a consulting firm. You're getting a person who's sitting at home and working, but consulting to you basically on an hourly basis for a few hours a week on a project basis, where they're much more happier because they're getting to do a bit of everything, which a lot of us, I guess, enjoy doing. But also you're getting the best skills for the price you're willing to pay for it as well.
Yeah.
I think there's lots of risks for that as well, where you don't know where the people are, what type of infrastructure they're working within, do they have cybersecurity in place? So the risks are also quite large, but I think I'll just focus on the opportunities for now.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that idea. And it's almost like you said, the CFO of the future is the one who's kind of looking in the past and looking at historical information to report moving forward. I think so too is the manager from the past that said, you must be at work during these hours. And, you know, we want to see you at your desk to make sure that you're sweating enough during the course of the day. So yeah, it's really interesting dynamic how that's changed. So good stuff. Russ, will come to you next. And as the kind of brand ambassador and also custodian of finance over at Alteryx, what would you say you see as the most common trends or use cases of automation that helps build resilience and sort of redefining finance, like we've kind of heard a bit from Estelle and Yusuf?
Yeah, I think a few things here, a few thoughts. Number one is something I touched on in my presentation earlier about pivoting from what I call the 70-30 in finance. 70% of our time as finance professionals gathering information in data and you know, working to bring that together in a lot of cases in very manual ways, and only 30% roughly of the time left to do the more comprehensive analyses. And so how do we change that? How do we pivot that to 30-70, where we're only spending 30% of our time or less, ideally, getting the information that we need to then spend 70% of our time building better models, right?
Yeah.
I don't meet a lot of FP&A teams that are truly to the point where they've got high levels of automation within their organizations, and they're able to get to scenario modeling and what if analyses and just build more robust models that are going to be better guides to the business, and plays right into Yusuf's point about you know, CVO and being a valued business partner to the CEO. I think in terms of use cases, what we see a lot of, which makes total sense, is how do we improve forecasts? How do we improve our ability to see what's coming up? A forecast we know is never going to be 100% accurate, but
Sure.
But you know, improving forecasts by several points of accuracy goes a long way if you're in a business trying to predict demand, inventory levels, and it positions us when we're making decisions about use of cash and capital investment. If the better our forecasts are, the better early decisions we can make on where we're going to place bets in the business, right? From a capital allocation perspective. And then lastly, what I'd say is there are tons of use cases of good value being created around period over period variance, and more than just explaining the numbers. Something changed by 50 million year over year. It's more than that. And what's even more important is to understand, and this plays into what both Yusuf and I and others have talked about already, make sure we're getting to the true root cause of why those numbers are the numbers. And even more importantly, what are we going to do about it to influence the future path? What kind of action could we take now to help navigate?
Yeah, thanks, Russ. It's all really important conversations that we, I imagine, are having, but sometimes maybe we feel a little bit stuck and not sure sort of which direction to go in. So I think that's why these conversations are great. Conversation starters or idea generators that we can go back to our finance teams and start doing something about it. So yeah, that's really good. And Estelle, on the topic of doing something about it, I know when we had a previous conversation, you start off the call saying this is not a sprint, it's a marathon. And I know that you've been on quite a marathon with a finance transformation. Could you maybe share a little bit more around the partnership that you have with Alteryx, some of the challenges that you had previously encountered or experienced? And then I know you shared a real kind of highlights of some of the errors that you were able to pick up as a result of this automation more generally. So please just share as much information as you can.
Thank you so much, John. Yes, so it all started with this vision I had. Once again, and the word gets used a lot today, is that to become finance of the future, and not reporting on past performance the whole time, but to give real insights to the business so that they can make informed decisions. So I went on this journey and looked for somebody I can partner with to make this happen. Came across Alteryx, and we've been on this journey probably just over a year already. And just to give some highlights maybe, is firstly 98% time saving. So I mean, let's get practical here so that everybody can understand what we actually achieve. Where normally in a month, our month-end process would take about 5 business days. Now we wake up on the second business day of the month and everything is done. From journaling to all our reconciliations and everything that goes with it.
Okay.
There was significant monetary savings. I'm just going to name a few: 3 million in commission payments, 2.8 million in partner cashback payments, and then of course there was a big one, 62 million loss prevention because of this automation. Wow. Which I think is just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then as a result of these automated reconciliations that runs daily, we pick up production issues in the IT team even before they can do that, which I think is also quite significant.
Yeah.
Then, of course, like what Russ also mentioned, all starts with data. Data is everything. So your data analytics is just so important. And because of this, I mean, I started on the journey, but the BI team, the actuarial team, everybody is on board at the moment. We even freed up a week's worth of capacity within the BI team.
Wow.
Because of this, the data analytics that we all do together now, which is quite significant because the business gets closer together. We're breaking down those silos.
Yeah, that's really amazing. That goes back to kind of Yusuf's point around being adaptable within our teams and just kind of looking at things a little bit differently. So great to see that there's been so many positive cases there, Estelle. So really, that's really commendable, and it doesn't happen by accident. So well done to your team and the sort of partnership that you've managed to kind of forge and build. That's really incredible stats that you shared there. So yeah, amazing.
Thank
I
you, John.
know that it can still be pretty challenging. So Russ, I'm going to come to you with this question, and I think when we start thinking about these digital transformation journeys, there's obviously quite a bit of hesitance and resistance, and sometimes the people side of the change is a lot more daunting. Well, obviously a lot more daunting, but probably a lot more challenging to kind of bring people along. So what maybe suggestions do you have to kind of help people navigate this journey more effectively? How do we bring our people along so that we have everyone just kind of singing off that same hymn sheet, and there's a positive sentiment around digital transformation and these automation journeys?
Yeah, John, and you're at the heart of one of the biggest challenges, as I mentioned earlier, in organizations, is how do we move the people with us when we decide to go on a journey, a transformation journey? And I'd offer that the people and culture piece is not only the most challenging, but it's the most important to successful change. And I think making our people participants in the process is really, really important, right? Allow them to help create the value with us, showcase their successes, constantly nurture their learning, right? Make it fun, make it collaborative, build this community that I talked about earlier with people, and make it even, may I suggest, a little bit competitive. People like a little bit of friendly competition. You know, we talk about hackathons and analytics events where we do make it fun and we gamify a little bit for people. And there's an element of competition in all that, but it's fun, friendly competition. And you know, I liken all of this to playing on a football team, right? You normally don't see individual players on a team that stop in the middle of play and kind of wonder why they're here and wonder if they're contributing or not. I think on a sports team, any sports team, it's really crystallized. You know, here's your role, the position you play, here's how you be a teammate, and here's how we win. And I think you can take a lot of those same concepts and bring them into business, and it really gets back to allowing people to be active participants in your success and making them feel that, making them feel excited about where we're going, I think is really, really important.
100%. Yeah, that's so right, Russ. And what Russ was referring to there, everyone, is, you know, the partnership and the team dynamics. It's like Russi Rasmus and the Boca, who are of course going to win the World Cup on Saturday as well. But that's a conversation for another time. I like that idea around bringing people along and that kind of focus and just ensuring collaboration as well. And Yusuf, that's something that you and your team do incredibly well. So I think a lot of people are thinking, you know, of course, budgets are quite constrained and limited. And what I really loved about your approach, Yusuf, is how, and forgive me if I get the terminology wrong, I think you said you do learning Fridays with your finance team. And just tell us a little bit more about what's involved in that, how that's impacted your culture, and just how the dynamics have changed as a result of it. Because that's something we can all start tomorrow.
Thank you. So my finance team is online, so they're going to hold me honest to what I say.
You better
now.
tell the truth.
About 7 or 8 years ago at my previous company, I realized that we were just struggling. And we, at the company at the time, there was literally no budget for anything. I mean, if you wanted a text, a booklet to make notes, and you needed to ask someone for permission before you bought it. So budgets were tight. So we were trying to look for ways to learn and upskill people with literally no money whatsoever. I mean, everyone's been there at some point. And what I found was the first day we said, let's sit together on a Friday morning for 2 hours and learn something. And as boring as it sounds, we called it a Learning Friday, and we did it every couple of weeks on a Friday morning. There were a few rules we put in place. So it doesn't matter how busy we were, how stressed out we were, and what deadline we had that day, we'd force ourselves to be there. The other rule was we wouldn't get too technical. So we try not to open Excel workbooks with formulas and Excel stuff. because that's our comfort zone. And we speak about everything other than Excel. So yes, we may touch on Excel, but we spoke about everything around it. And interestingly enough, we did one this past Friday, and the journey we went through was, we said, how do we tell the story about the Excel workbook? So you've got the data, and everyone, or many finance professionals, would know how to click on the buttons and put the chart, the pie chart or the bar graph together, and that's where we stop. So we walk the journey to say, how do you put it into PowerPoint from there? How do you use the tools in PowerPoint, the designer option, to make PowerPoint do those fancy animations for you? Because as much as we think we smart with PowerPoint and people put up these fantastic presentations, the software does it for us. Yeah. We then went a step further to say, so now we've got the Excel data that's been transferred into a chart or a graph or something of that sort, and it's been put into PowerPoint with nice animations and all the bells and whistles. What then happens? So then we start speaking about, how do you convey the message to someone? And we joked about the whole death by PowerPoint presentations that we all hate, and how to use pictures and graphics to tell your message. And then as a final point, we started speaking about what goes wrong. So when you stand up and the computer restarts, or load shedding hits, or all of those things that happen that you don't predict. So we spoke about something in Excel that we do, but how do we tell the story properly from start to finish for the business? It works quite well, because we're not speaking about formulas and all of these weird things that we hopefully can do in Excel. We're speaking about everything around it that tells that story a lot better. I think what we also identified is that between Google and YouTube, all of the answers are there. There should be a YouTube video for every single problem you have on the computer. I'd like to think so. And from a team culture perspective, it's epic. I mean, we get to sit for 2 hours together, eat donuts or healthy food, depending on our mood on the day. And we get to just speak about everything outside of finance.
Yeah, I think that's a really cool way, because you can sort of dial up and dial down the intensity of those sessions. So it's learning, and the byproduct is building the culture, becoming more collaborative, and everybody gets an opportunity to share. So I really like that, Yusuf, because this is something that we can all do that doesn't cost us anything other than a little bit of better time management, and some planning as well. So thanks for sharing that out. I know lots of others will find that valuable too. Staying on the topic of people, I wanted to come to you next, Estelle. And during our conversation, we kind of discussed this a little bit in a session we hosted last week as well. But there's often a bit of a misperception, and that is that, okay, it's all fine and well that, we integrate automation, but then people are going to lose their jobs, and we're going to become redundant as finance people. And you actually shared the exact opposite to that, of how your team have become more skilled. So could you share a little bit more about just how that journey's been for you, please?
Yes, absolutely. On the contrary, the growth opportunities are endless. Successful digital transformations are enabled by the finance agenda that addresses not only the workforce, the workplace, technology, and data. So digital technologies are changing the skills and capabilities of finance organizations. Functional silos are breaking down, like I've mentioned previously, and new roles are arising, like analytics managers, value managers, business growth partners, digital accountants, and transformation leads that works across functions, connecting the dots throughout the business. So I always say, according to me, looking ahead, people will connect the dots across the functions. So everyone in finance, for example, needs a base level digital IQ, while the IT function then needs a solid foundation in business knowledge. And as we all always talk about IQ and EQ, I've got this new one called CQ, which I see as community intelligence. And what's also great about Alteryx, I just want to mention that as well, is Alteryx got this amazing community. So while working on the software and everything related to that, if you struggle or you have a problem, you get onto this community online, ask your question, and it basically gets answered immediately.
Wow. That is really cool. Okay, that's amazing. Thanks again for sharing that, Estelle. I think we've got quite a few questions that have already started coming in, so I'm just going to review some of them quickly and then see. We can all kind of speak to these. Yusuf, Estelle, Russ. Let me just check in the first one here, and then also please continue for the questions to keep coming into the chat. We really appreciate those. And then as we wrap up our session here, we'll be asking the three of you just for sort of any final bits of advice or wisdom, so just that we have that in the back of our minds. So let's see here. So Shabana, and let us know if you need to expand on this. The comment was, is there a tried and tested curriculum that can be shared as a start for upskilling finance teams in finance, modernization, and data analytics? So I'm not sure who'd like to take that one.
Yeah, I can. Let me take a pass at that one.
Yeah.
I think there are organizations that do develop, I'd say, a more formalized curriculum for people, sort of a training track, if you will. I have found that the best training, early training, is to give people the access to Alteryx, the Alteryx platform in this case, and allow them to start to play around with it. Actually, start to connect some simple data sources. If you haven't used the platform, it's very user friendly. It's drag and drop. You can do super powerful things. I know Yusuf mentioned the E word. He broke up when he said, I think it was something I didn't quite hear, but the power that you get in the Alteryx platform is a night and day difference, and allows you, without having to be a code writer, to do some amazing things in a very easy to use, comfortable format for people. So I think the biggest early hurdle is just getting people exposed and comfortable with logging in and starting to just in a harmless way play around with some data sets and see what you can do with similar functions that would be similar to Excel, pivot table and things like that. But I think once people realize the power that they have in their hands, they get excited. And then from there, I mentioned earlier, constantly nurturing your community, which includes sharing of best practices. It includes various trainings. There's micro certifications, micro credentialing that you can do within the Alteryx platform to get core certified and advanced certified. And people should certainly take advantage of those more formalized elements of the overall upskilling.
Sure. Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that, Russ. I noticed another question in the chat from Sabelo, and Sabelo, I'm just going to ask you to expand on that a little bit. You asked about the purpose and impact of CFO, but I think there might be a little bit of context missing from that question. So if you can build on that. And Yusuf, I'm going to come to you next, because you mentioned earlier that some incredible places where we can learn, you said pretty much if you're looking for any answer, you can find it on kind of YouTube or Google, etc., etc. What are some of the other ways that you stay on top of your game? I mean, you've been a frequent advisor, and you've provided lots of articles and insights and shared lots of panel discussions with CFO South Africa. And every time you bring a different view. So how do you stay up to date with information?
Yeah, so I think the first is to attend sessions like this. Right, that's probably the easiest way, because these sessions are always topical, and we'll chat later. But on a more serious note, I think a lot of the, let's say, fancy tools I've implemented, at least in the past 5 years, wasn't my ideas. It's because someone said, Yusuf, I don't understand what you guys are doing in finance. Please explain it to me. And the person who asked me that question is actually on the call, but I'm not going to point him out. He said, please make this easy for me. And we took a piece of paper and a pencil and we drew a picture. Right, and the long and short of that is we managed to take an income statement and put it on a moving chart on PowerPoint. Right now, it's quite easy for me to do it now because all the data is in there. The picture is built, so you just update your figures, and then your income statement moves along as you click the buttons. But funny enough, not funny enough, actually, those 2 slides took me about 3 hours to put together the first time, because I sat on YouTube late at night, and you find the video that works. And the video was probably 10 minutes or 15 minutes long, but you watch it over and over and over until you make your picture work. So to answer your question more directly, you need to understand what the problem in the business is and try and fix it for them, and not fix it as in fix the number, but help them understand what you are trying to achieve. Because the sadness is that the financials are so interesting if you understand it, but the finance team makes up such a small proportion of the business. The larger part of the business don't appreciate it because they don't understand it. And if we can explain it to them better, people are not just concerned about what bonus they're getting or what profit we're making. They actually understand what makes a business tick.
Yes. Yeah, and I think explaining it like that, it just takes any sort of fear or intimidation away from it as well, because it's like using an analogy. It seems really complex and overwhelming, but we just give a much shorter, more succinct explanation. I liked what you also mentioned about using an open source generative AI model, and of course we can't mention names, so we wouldn't say that you mentioned ChatGPT, obviously, but you mentioned quite a few cool use cases through there as well, Yusuf.
Yeah, so I've only recently been using it, and it's so amazing. I call it Jarvis from Iron Man. That's what it should be doing. A few days ago, I just tested it, and I said, please write me a 2-page article, and I put the topic on there. And within, I don't know, 5-10 seconds, the article was written. So I'm not going to publish that, obviously, because it's not my work. But it's amazing at how quickly it generated that article. A few months ago, we needed a policy to be written, and we didn't know where to start. ChatGPT actually gave us a skeleton for it. Obviously, you need to panel beat it quite a lot, but it saved so much time in just that understanding or setting up phase. It took all of that stress away. And I think as people become more open to using it, it will become a lot more useful to our businesses and adding more efficiencies.
Yeah, it really will. And I think that's what it's all about. It's not about one replacing the other or one being superior. It's about a collaboration between man or woman, or how we identify, and machine. That's really what it's all about. So
I think if I can, I need something important to mention that I don't think it's going to take over our jobs. I think we always say it doesn't matter where you work and what work you do, as long as you're in finance, there'll always be work available. There's always so much work to do. It's just going to take away the boring stuff and give you more exciting things to do.
How terrible is that going to be? I mean, none of us are looking forward to that, right? Yeah, it's just about embracing it for sure. Thanks a lot, Yusuf. So let's get some final sort of and I'll let you allow the directions go, but just some sort of final thoughts or suggestions, or maybe a good starting point. So maybe Estelle, because you're still running the marathon and you kind of might have had some hesitations or concerns at the beginning, what advice would you give to others here on the call? What's a logical first step, or where should we be spending our time and focus?
Well, I would definitely suggest you to search for a partner on this journey, and then of course get the buy-in from business, because as soon as you show the result or what can be gained of it, I always refer back to when I presented the business case. Then of course the business first question is, but what does this cost? And then my only answer was, I don't know, but what I can tell you is what it will cost us if we don't do it. That's just like we mentioned in the beginning. We have to follow this path. We're all going to have to go on this journey, and it's very, very exciting. So good luck.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I like what you said there about it's an exciting journey, and I think if we can all just change our mindset to one of, and it's something you had on one of the slides earlier as well, Russ. I forget the exact context, but it spoke about the growth mindset, and we're open to these challenges, and we embrace challenges, and we create a psychologically safe environment where not it's okay, but rather it's expected that we fail and learn. I think it's really important as well. So what final bits of advice would you give to us, Russ? And then perhaps if people want to embark on this journey with Alteryx, what would you say is the next step? And then we'll come to you last, Yusuf.
Yeah, I think it's really easy. I mentioned earlier, start working with your data. Get your license. We can get you licenses set up pretty easily to allow you to start innovating within the tool. Do some experimenting. Get used to the look and feel of it, and you will start making some valuable contributions in innovations. You'll be automating processes. I encourage people to look end to end. So, one of the popular end to end processes in finance is the closing cycle, right? So when you step back and you look at that closing cycle and you start to understand where you might be losing days, in fact, and you understand the manual, maybe their manual journal entries or other manual steps in that process, and how do you start to automate that with tools like the Alteryx platform in a very simple way? That'll start building what I would refer to as the flywheel of value and innovation. So yeah, get in the tool, and again, there's ways for us as partners to augment us and our partners to augment these things with you, whether you want to do an analytics day or some other, it could be a speaker series, an executive session. Somebody already mentioned making sure that you have senior leadership support in your organization. That is extremely important, because you want us as leaders, we want to be able to pave the way for our teams to do the learning and the innovation and to all be participants in value creation for the enterprise.
Yeah. Thanks, Russ. Very, very comprehensive answer there. We appreciate that. And then lastly, Yusuf, as a long-standing CFO and friend of the community, you are really in tune with a lot of the challenges that lots of us are experiencing here. So what would you say is a kind of final bit of advice for us?
So I think we've spoken a lot about chief value officers and the CFO of the future and data and looking forward, but I think we mustn't forget what we still need to do. So as much as I mentioned earlier that the CFO is transaction, or the CFO of the past was a transactional person looking at the past and telling the story, that will never go away. It's just in the past, that was a big part of the job, whereas now it's not as much of the job as the other things. So make sure we still can explain the numbers and explain why the numbers went up or down, because as much as you put a budget together for next year, you still are held accountable for it next year, and you need to explain why the numbers look like it does. It's important to, as much as we speaking about the future, let's not take away from the fact that we still need to understand what happened in the past to predict the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, equally as important. So thank you very much. I know that there were some additional questions that came in, and Karen, I can see that you've already responded to Mildred. And Mildred, if you need more insights or data on that, we will see if Estelle might be able to share some information with you. And Sabelo, thank you also for your contributions in the chat and asking questions like, how can we go about creating more job opportunities? And that's a conversation that I think all of us need to have. Sadly, there isn't enough time for that one today, but please continue to attend these sessions. I want to take an opportunity to thank the three of you. So thank you, Russ. Thank you, Estelle. Thank you, Yusuf, for your valuable contributions. We really appreciate the insights that you shared here. And on behalf of the CFO South Africa community, I'm confident that we all feel a little bit more empowered. We've had a learning Thursday, so thank you very much for that. And then, of course, thank you very much for our partner on the CFO South Africa webinar, Alteryx. We value your contribution and participation here today. So thanks so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon, rest of the day, and we look forward to seeing you in another online session soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao,
Thank
ciao.
you.
Take care, everybody.